to to initiate his dialogue. Welcome, sir. Welcome, Vageeshan ji.
Yeah, yeah. I hope I'm audible now, right?
Yeah, yes, yes, please, yes.
Yes. If you feel something is voice break or something like that, please let me know. I can then stop my video and then I can go on my audio.
You can mix even both Telugu and English for the convenience of many people available here locally. You can, if you want.
Yeah,
If you
yeah,
like,
yeah,
please.
yeah. Right. With the hope that there will not be any power cut in between. with all that good hope, let me start talking about. Um, the idea, because as this day is a celebration of Republic Day and a 75th Republic Day of India, I would like to focus on three basic things. For some time, I will delve into the question of what does it mean by republic and democracy. I'm very lucky today. I'm thankful to Center for Social Dialogue. It seems to be in the list as I could see. I'm age-wise, I'm being relatively younger because uh, I'm privileged to talk to the people who are experienced and all that, all in various walks of life. That is a great privilege, and I deem this process as a learning experience. Kindly consider it as a kind of an open thinking from a relative younger co-passenger in that way. So the three parts of it will be a focus would be on elaborating a little bit on the idea of democracy and republic and democracy, how they both came together in case of India. And then we will talk a little bit about how by 1950 we envisaged an idea called democratic republic with certain value premises to be fulfilled, and then how the journey had been, and then what is the way forward for us. These are the three areas which I will be focusing upon. The first invariably will be a little bit less time taking, and the rest too will take most of the time. The republicanism fundamentally is an idea which takes a break from uh, maybe from God as well as from blue-bloodedness or a specific kinds of, because legitimizing the political authority, which we call as a state, had gone through so many phases. And historically, in all civilizations, it had been associated either with divinity or with blood lineage. It had been the story across the civilizations. Now, gradually, even during the hoary past, there were different ideas of legitimization of political authority. For example, let us take the Indian case, where we were talking about empires and all that, and there are thinking about how rashtra, that means how a state should be, kinds of stuff during that point of time also. And then when the ideas of dharma and danda, especially the idea of danda, that means the governing or coercive power, how does it come into existence and all that, which was given a kind of a divine backing even during those times. There were ganarajyas, that means where the political authority is not something which is blood lineage based, but then some sort of a selection on a more secular basis or on a mundane basis used to take place. So we could see those kinds of Ganarajyas also, because even in Kautilya's Arthashastra and in Kamandaka's Nitisara, we will find the references of Ganarajyas. And in Buddhist statecraft related literature also, we'll be finding, for example, the Lichavi Gana, from where Siddhartha Gautama comes from. So we have seen these kinds of things. Nonetheless, in the hoary past, legitimization basically predominantly was supported either by a divine kind of a interventionist explanation coupled with blood lineage kind of a thing. There is an interesting story in Upanishads where Janaka, this famous Rajarshi, who comes to power after so much of intellectual exercise, this, that, and all, and in his sabha, in his assembly, he suddenly declares that I am the king. That means I am the authority. Aham dandosmi. That means I am the authority. I am the authority. Thrice he says so. Then a sage comes and says, raises his hand and says, let Janaka, would you mind to reiterate the same thing in the other way around? Instead of saying aham dandosmi, you say dharma dandosmi, dharma dandosmi, dharma dandosmi. That means the rita or the principle will be the authority instead of me being an authority. Why don't you say so? And Janaka rectifies and he says in the same way, dharma dandosmi, dharma dandosmi, and dharma dandosmi. What does this dharma dandosmi mean? Here, the political authority is not completely uncontrolled. It is controlled by some sort of a rita or some sort of a principle. That's how dharma will be there. So there are various other kinds of interpretation. Let us not go into those interpretations of dharma, and let us, for our purpose of today's lecture, let us take it as a principle which will try to control even the authority. That's how it is. Now, gradually, though these kinds of pristine ideas were there, it is told that political authority is also closely associated with divine authority. As I told you, whether it is India, whether it is China, whether it is Arabia, pre-Islamic, or whether it is Egypt, or whether it is the Roman case. In each case, you will find this divine intervened or divine supported idea of political power. This is where I would say Na Vishnu Prithvi Patihi kind of an idea. If you would like to become a king, you should have a capacity to expand. Vishnu here means expansive capacity. This expansive capacity, you have to become a lord of expansive capacity to become a king. Na Vishnu Prithvi Patihi kinds of thing. All these things are there. Even in Greek city states and all that, which say that state is fundamentally an ideal kind of a thing, they also somewhat associate themselves with religious ceremonies, this, that, and all. Now, as things went on, at one particular point, especially by 12th and 13th centuries, even before what we call as the European Renaissance and all that, the idea of republicanism once again comes forth. Kindly note it, it was there in the hoary past, and no idea which is there, which is alive in human existence, will never completely die. Probably it may be playing second fiddle, or sometimes it may be subterranean, but at a later point of time, it will have its own, where a conducive atmosphere is there, it will come again. It will come again, and it will re-emerge. So we could see in the writings of Machiavelli, for the first time, the ideas for the ideas of republicanism he speaks, even way before the Italian unification and all that. So what are the principles of republicanism, and why the people who were talking about divine origin or divine rights kinds of a thing, why exactly they were wary of the idea of republicanism? Because republicanism in itself was never allowing anybody to become superpowers. Because there is an interesting anecdote which I would like to tell you here. When Plato was talking about a philosopher king, where the king will be more enlightened soul, who will be educated by the state for a quite longer time in various faculties and all that, and this person is going to become a ruler, Aristotle at a later point of time says, instead of a philosopher king, it is better to be ruled by laws, where laws are distilled experience of human beings. That's what Aristotle subtly telling, though he reveres his guru, he says, instead of a philosopher king, it is better to be governed by laws. That means it is better to be governed by certain laid down principles, and even a ruler is not go above the principles. To that extent, dharma will control even a king. So this had been there had been lots of discussion about being dharmic and being adharmic and all that in Indian Puranic yore and all that also. Let us take one point here. Why people who love authoritarianism don't like republicanism? They don't like republicanism because republicanism talks about principles. And once you are going to abide by the principles, you become smaller and principles become bigger. And then there is an eternal kind of going a little bit humble before the principles, and sometimes even to reduce the egos of the person who is wielding the power, and all these things must happen. And at the core lies many people, especially in 12th, 13th centuries and all that, were not liking. For example, when Machiavelli, who wrote who was a teacher of the Medici princes and all that, he was revered. When he started writing about republicanism and all that, people gradually, especially the powers at that point of time, asked him not to be in public life. You can imagine a Rajaguru at a point of time when he was started talking about republicanism was asked to reduce his public life, and then to go and write in seclusion and all that. So the rest of his life he started writing in seclusion, and even the famous work his Prince also comes and not in the plum times of public life. So the ruling class traditionally was against this idea of republicanism, because republicanism brings in some sort of a principled behavior, and then which cannot be surpassed. So even an individual is not above the Rita or the Dharma. For example, I'll give you another small example. In Ramayana's Sundarakanda, when Hanuman proclaims himself to be the emissary of Rama in court of Ravana, Ravana becomes very, very furious, and then he says, kill this fellow. Then Vibhishana says, Holy history and the laid down dharma, both tradition as well as dharma, always told that an emissary must not be killed. This is what Vibhishana says. And Ravana, after listening to him and other older ministers, he says the next best punishment is some body part can be severed, or some sort of a thing can be done, lesser punishment can be given. This is what the dharma is all about. So Ravana, the man who ruled the Lanka and who had all this power at its disposal, was also bound by the principles. So the being bound by the principle is what republicanism is all about. And hence, the republican idea was not so welcome by those people who were closely associated with the religious dominated notions of political power, or blue-blooded notions, or lineage, blood lineage blood lineage based notions of political power. And hence, with the modern ideas of how state legitimizes itself, my dear friends, here let me put to you this thing very clearly. Any political power has to be legitimized. To get legitimacy, there are certain principles. తెలుగులో ఒక్క మాట చెప్తాను. అధికారం అనేదానికి ఆమోదం ఉండాలి. ఆమోదం లేకపోతే అధికారం నిలవదు. అయితే ఆమోదం రావాలి అంటే ఏం చేయాలి? ఆమోదించబడినటువంటి శక్తి రూపాన్ని మనం అధికారం అని అంటాం. లెజిటిమైజ్డ్ పవర్ ఈజ్ అథారిటీ. పవర్ అథారిటీగా ట్రాన్స్ఫార్మ్ అయ్యే పద్ధతి ఏంటంటే లెజిటిమైజేషన్, ఆమోదయోగ్యత, ఆమోదనీయత అనేటటువంటిది కావాలి. సో ద ఓల్డ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ ఆఫ్ దిస్ legitimization had been religion or lineage. Now from religion and lineage, gradually a new idea of legitimization is coming. This is what the principle based legitimization, which at a later point of time, which we call it as the rule of law. For the first time, we could see this in modern times when the British Parliament started trying to control the kings or the crown. So political philosophy, if many of you are well-versed people in political philosophy journey, we could see the negation of religion and the negation of blue-bloodedness right from 15th and 16th century seriously. So this is how republicanism comes in, and republicanism in a way makes a journey towards what we call as rule of law. And also it talks about building some sort of a foundational norm to govern. This is what the beauty of republicanism is all about. Now the second thing which I would like to tell you here is democracy. Let me tell you one interesting thing. Many of you may be knowing, but then as a part of this lecture, I think that makes a very good connect. Democracy was not a seriously loved or liked form of government for quite long. Especially the Greeks were never loving it. Aristotle calls it as a corrupt form of government, whereas at a later point, very minorly here and there, certain places democracy probably would have been working. For example, in Pallava and in Chola, and especially in Chola's times in South India, there had been the systems called Kuduvolai, where people used to elect the village head and all that. But that was not even that was for this local purposes and all that. Beyond that, democracy, that means demos, means people participating in the political process, was not that welcome. For example, when we look at to the Greek city-states which do talk about people's participation, they restrict the participation to the classes which have leisure, who are basically the warriors and the debaters, warriors and philosophers kinds of stuff, and the higher class artisans to an extent are the people who participate in the assemblies, in city councils, as well as even in Roman assemblies and all that. So these kinds of things were the participation of people was restricted. If rule of law is the fulcrum of what we call as republicanism, popular sovereignty, that means people becoming the source of political power, is the center for democracy. So rule of law or governing by principle which have been there in hoary past and history now consolidates by 13th and 14th and 15th centuries, and now you have republicanism. And gradually, while republicanism is making its very hard journey, who is the center of political power? This question comes, and to answer this political question, gradually democracy comes into existence. The interesting part which I was mentioning to you is, if some of you might have been well versed with the famous American constitution making debates, which happened not in a constituent assembly, but happened in open, in writings and all that. So if you look into these papers, there very, very rarely, or almost to an extent of 1% or less than that, the Federalist Papers, if you read, the idea of democracy is not reflecting. What you could see is Republican idea is reflecting. We can understand that. French Revolution already, or American Revolution, did what it did is it did away with the British Crown's control over the land, which is called the newly found land and all that. We have so many different opinions about this newfound land kind of thing and all that. Let me not go into that. But then broadly, the Americans done away with the British Crown, and then what is the next best system of ruling? Then they started calling it as republic. And then let me tell you at the outset here, building a republic is also not very easy. From 1777 to 1800s, 1840s, you could see the Civil War, this, that, and all. So building the republic in itself is a tough job, because making people to abide to the existing norms or the consensus built norms itself is a tough job. And hence, when we talk about republicanism, two very important things come to our notice. One, a consensus must be built on the question of rules. Then the second thing is following the rules systematically. And let me tell you, both are a very, very hard task. And then add to this serious problem, popular sovereignty. That means people participating in the political process at a very, very large level. That's what I call as democracy. And hence, Federalist Papers were not very seriously interested in democracy, but were interested in republicanism. And again, when J.S. Mill is writing on liberty and was also talking about franchise to women, so on and so forth, even in his writings in late 19th century, what we could find is a kind of a caution, a kind of a worry about popular democracy or popular sovereignty. Because at a later point, the French Revolution, which has seen so much of blood and gore, created a kind of a awe in the minds of thinking people that democracy has a tendency of being very violent, being populistic, being a mob rule, so on and so forth. But nevertheless, gradually, the idea of large people participating in the political process gained significance. And hence, after American Revolution, the French Revolution and the Russian Revolution, when they started talking about republicanism, qualitatively different language of republicanism they started talking about, and then it was being clubbed with what we call as popular sovereignty. So that's how things started coming in. And you know the story of French case. It was not that easy, though republicanism and popular sovereignty were spoken so much. Napoleon comes in and he says he's the general will, and all that has happened. So building republic, sticking to the ideas is not an easy thing. But then republicanism became popular, democracy also became popular, and you could see Russia in 1917, say 1917, calls itself United Soviet Socialist Republics. So each nationality which is the part of then the Tsarist Russia is deemed to be a republic. That means it will be governed by certain principles. After Mao's revolution in China, they call itself as People's Republic of China. So the older you could see the American Republic, the French Republic, and all that. And then now you are able to see the 19th century avatars of republics coming in. So Republican idea became popular. And then along with that, what has become popular is democracy also. In case of India, let me come to our case. We in our constitution called ourselves as a democratic republic. No constitution before, no, very few constitutions before India called themselves very expressively as democratic republics. In a way, bringing these two things together, that means the republican and the democratic idea together, was a very tough proposition. Probably, Indian experience for 200 odd years of being under a colonial yoke, especially the political economy of the colonial masters and the governance types of the colonial masters, both had an indelible mark on Indian struggles, and hence we wanted both republicanism and democratic things to come into our place. That is how it is not a manna from the heaven, or it is not just somebody's whims and fancies which came into the constituent assemblies. The experience which we have seen, what kind of a governance is there? Popular participation is not there. So from 1909 to 1935, whatever they did, the ruling system is not taking popular perceptions into consideration. Hence, the 1949-50 exercise, when we sat, our ancestors sat, our founding people, founding intellectuals, our founding people, when they sat for making a constitution, they brought together these two cardinal values together and called ourselves a democratic republic. Now, let me very quickly go into the second phase of my presentation. Here, let us ask a question. What kind of a democratic republic we envisage? I have given you examples of republics: People's Republic of China, United Soviet Socialist Republic, because 20th century there had been number of republics, old and new. So certain republics which reduced the power of the kings and all that. Certain republics which overthrew the feudal ruling systems and all that. So these kinds of systems were around, and we in India, when we declared ourselves as a democratic republic, what kind of a democratic republic we want? What is the aim of this democratic republic? Popular sovereignty, that means each and every individual, every citizen with certain, when he comes to certain age, will become a part of the political process. That is one broad idea, where in America itself, in certain states, universal adult franchise happened only in 1960s and 1970s. In case of England, full franchise for women, even after so much of suffragette movement and all that, it happened only in 1960s and 70s. Compared to that, we wanted a popular sovereign government, though there were doubts expressed about it. But Congress, from Karachi to Lahore and elsewhere, it was stuck to the idea of popular sovereignty. And people like Baba Sahib Ambedkar and others were very seriously inclined to support that idea. Now, what kind of a democratic republic we envisaged? My take here is as you're all experienced elders, my proposition is this. We wanted a dignified fraternity to be built. A dignified fraternity to be built. This comes only in the last part of our preamble. Dignified fraternity has to be built. After reading so many times of this preamble and teaching for quite some time, I feel this dignified fraternity becomes a very, very important core point of our constitutional value. There are two things. One is dignified, the other is fraternity. Because before India becoming a democratic republic, we struggled a lot. We had all the diversities and we had all the fault lines. We have quarreled among ourselves. We also reconciled among ourselves. We have seen a history of defining nation on the basis of religion and the problems which are associated with it. Everything we have seen in those tumultuous times. And then comes the thing called, we would like to build a fraternity, which is at the which I call is the core of what we call as a nation. So fraternity is, though looks a little bit masculine in its character, let us give a kind of a artha vistrati, to use a semantic thing, give a larger meaning to it. It is all about consanguineness, a kind of a feeling of belonging, the sense of belonging. So that is what fraternity is all about. Every time when I talk about fraternity, that story of Mahabharata comes to my mind, where in the final stages, just before going to the war, Sanjaya comes to Pandavas, and then the first opening remark of this wonderful diplomat is, at the end of the day, you are brothers. That's how he starts. Edi emaina miru annadamule kada. You are brothers. Then Dharmaraja once he's taken aback, because in those Dharmaraja's younger days, especially when Kauravas and Pandavas were taken to a picnic near a small forest where Yaksha was around, they were all beaten. Especially the Kauravas were also beaten, and then only 5 Pandavas were there, and Dharmaraja, and even among them, Dharmaraja alone is there, and Yaksha starts debating and all that, and then he answers and all that. Then during that point of time, he says, if we are quarreling among ourselves, we are five and they are 100. But if somebody else is coming against us, we are 105. Vayam panchadikam shatam. Suddenly, Sanjaya is harping on that and saying that you are brothers at the end of the day. So you are 105, you are not 5 and 1, 5 and 100. So he is trying to rekindle the childhood camaraderie which Dharmaraja was speaking in those Yaksha days and all that. Dharmaraja was taken aback, and then he was started thinking, oh yeah, this is something worth thinking kinds of thing and all that. And then some internal chemistry is working in favor of Sanjay. Then Bhima comes up and says, you are wonderfully using your diplomatic prowess. That's good. But then what kind of fraternity you are talking about? In Telugu, Tirupati Venkata Kavulu made a wonderful poem on this. Madugundrosiri Nita Munchiri Vishanambu Bettinchiri. Madugundrosiri Nita Munchiri Vishanambu Bettinchiri Kumpagalchiri. Aha, Yemis how Bratramo. That's how it comes in. So they pushed us into ponds. They gave us poison. They burnt our abode. They wanted us not to live in this world at any point of time. And then you are telling that is fraternity. What kind of a fraternity they have maintained? So when fraternity comes into question, we will definitely have to qualify it. What should be the fraternity? What should be the real fraternity? Because Daya, the sense of Dayadi Bhava, that means the sense of Blood relation itself doesn't automatically make you close, which is called Jnati. The Jnati Bhava automatically will not bring closeness. Jnati Bhava definitely brings in a kind of blood lineage kind of relationship, but then Jnati Bhava automatically will not bring that closeness. Now, said this much, fraternity has to be qualified. So, the people who are sitting in the Constituent Assembly, they qualified it with a wonderful word, guaranteeing dignity to everyone. That means we wanted a dignified fraternity. Then let us come to the question of what does it mean by dignity. The next question comes in, because now a wonderful adjective has been put before fraternity. It is dignity. What is dignity basically? Dignity is providing basic freedoms, providing equality, moral as well as material, especially status. In our case, it is called equality of status and opportunity. Mind you, in 1950, 49, 50, there was a centralized Soviet model and there was a capitalist model which was existing for governance. We were using two words. We were not using state-centered economic models. We were not using the complete capitalist models, but we were talking about equality of status and opportunity, how loaded they are. It will not happen just like that. Equality of status and equality of opportunity will not come just like that. You can't just pay lip service to bring equality of opportunity and equality of status. You have to work very hard. Material equality is embedded in these two words. And then you have freedom of thought, conscience, organization, so on and so forth. Let me tell you, many people, and then comes the question of justice. The three justices: justice, political, economic, and social. Or justice, economic. Let us go in the order it has been: justice, political, economic, and social. So three kinds of justices, freedom and equality, put together is what brings in dignity. So today, on the day of 75th Republic, when we talk about what kind of a vision which we had in 1949-50, I think that vision was developed over a long struggles or a long journey of struggles in social and cultural world, political, economic world for around 100 years or for around 200 years. Just imagine, I'm just taking you back. In 1757-58, Battle of Plassey is there, and gradually the company Bahadur becomes very powerful. And probably my Telugu friends who are sitting here might have been aware of that famous rhyme, which even children recite. Gutlo Ma Bava Sipai, Gutlo Rupai Ma Bava Sipai. You might have heard about this childhood rhyme. I was wondering, Sepai is a word very, very specifically developed by Europeans, especially East India Company. So the word Sepai, Mahabhava Sepai, Kutlo Rupai Mahabhava Sepai. That means becoming Sepai with East India Company was a lucrative thing. Otherwise, you will become a thug. That's a problem. So this lucrative thing in 1757, where Maba Sipai and Magutlo Gutlo Rupai kind of a thing, by 1857, people started talking about rebelling against Company Bahadur. In 100 years, this has happened. Why does this happen? There is a serious political economic journey by 1800, by late 1800s, where the social economic world of Sepais is being decimated by the Company Bahadur. Are there economic programs, so on and so forth? So the Sepai is now no more a kind of a person who is thinking, this is another kind of a ruling system. We will work with them and get our salary kinds of stuff. But then something is getting debased. So from 1850s to 1947, various phases, various movements in social and cultural world, as well as political and economic world, what we could see is a kind of tumultuous change, tumultuous, very fundamental questions. What should be the basic economics? What should be? That's where Dadabhai Nauroji is writing a famous book. He is telling that you are ruling, you are not ruling like British, because 1858, the crown is promising, I will give you a responsible government. What kind of a responsible government you are giving? That's where he is titling his book, Poverty and Un-British Rule of India. Your rule is un-British. You're not even dealing with the people even in the manner how British Parliament deals with its people and all that. So this kind of awareness which came in, and then the struggles in the political economic world and the socio-cultural world. Take Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Bankim Chandra, and then down the line, Jyotiba Phule, Savitribai Phule, Pandita Ramabai. So in the social world as well as in the political world, there were a number of struggles, and hence I would like to call India's struggles in plural only. I will never call India's struggle as India's struggle for independence as a singular thing. It is a plural thing, which was, if we go by Bhagavad Gita's norms, it was a war within also. Mamaka Pandavas Shaiva, that is what Arjuna keeps telling. But it's a battle within. In socio-cultural world, there was serious battle. In political economic world, there are battles. And these battles culminated in what we call as 1947-50. We had a bad patches also. The bad patches dividing ourselves on the basis of religion. That was a bad patch, which we had to bear the brunt of it. I am once again very lucky, because today I am being heard by people who are seniors to me in intellect as well as in pondering over all these things. It's a rare opportunity. It happens because me being a teacher, I always have this air of superiority of speaking to the young generation and all that. But I should, at this point, let me thank these organizers for giving me this kind of a thing. Now let me come back and say that the various kinds of struggles in the social and cultural world as well as in the economic and political world culminated in what we call as Indian Constitution. That is why we wanted a democratic republic. That's why we wanted a dignified fraternity. That is why we wanted to qualify what does it mean by dignity. So this is what the program is all about. I am a 71 born fellow. Today, when I was taking my girl to her school for hoisting the flag, so many memories started coming into my mind. Probably my schooling and everything was happening in a very rural area of India, where I could see. Now I could see. Today morning I was feeling a little bit emotional also while going. I was remembering. That means we were all 70 born. That means 30. In a way, if 1950 is the cutoff mark, 20 years after this constitution coming in, we are on this earth. And then by another 10 years, we are going to school and we are being taught that we are ruled by a republican values and all that, which were different from the values which we were imbibed at our home, which were different from the norms and principles which we follow at our personal level. It was an opening. It was a new kind of a thing. It was an opening. It was a creative unleashing of things and all that. So those early morning Prabhat fairies for both 15th August and 26th January came to my mind, where we were talking about how things took place and all that. And now, after 75 long years of journey, now the question remains, what about the core values? I set the tone. I am telling that the core value is guaranteeing dignified fraternity to each and every citizen. Citizen, let me tell you, I'm not talking about the voter, I'm talking about the citizen. So this is what the Indian Democratic Republic's core value is all about. So now the question is, very briefly, built, saw, built, bet, and came back kind of a thing of Ramayana, katte kotte teche kind of stuff. I'll just try to put the 325 years in perspective. The first 25 years, definitely, we had mammoth challenges. We were facing those mammoth challenges, and then we could build definitely a decent kind of democratic republican order in the face of many kind of parties. So we should um, we should be grateful to the people from 1950s to 1965-70 or till that point of time. The foundations definitely were laid on a solid footing, and the next uh, phase, which I would say the first 25 years, solid footing was there, but somewhere we failed in the same first phase in creatively thinking about deepening and widening the democracy. By late 70s, that means if you say the first 25 years is, my starting point here is 49-50. I'm starting from 50 to 25 is 75. That means, so till this 19, that means the time of emergency, what we could see is populism is replacing the core deliberative critical aspects of democracy. Democracy requires critiquing the authority because it is a republican democracy. Let me tell again and again, it is a rule bound system as well as a system which has to be negotiated, which has to be debated, deliberated, and all that. So somewhere in the late 1960s and 70s, the late somewhere in 70s, we gradually lost that fundamental core of digging deep and being wide, instead of making democracy more deliberative and more uh, participative. Probably we entered into a phase of equating democracy with elections. And let me tell you, this is the nemesis of any democracy. When you equate democracy with voting, you are reducing the entire citizen into a next category, which I call a citizen. Actually, reducing human into citizen itself is a problem. But then from reducing citizen to somebody to a voter is another problem. And post 1970s, what we could see is Indian democracy is gradually being reduced to what we call as elections. And now populism replaces the core distributive justice idea. So our way of looking at what does it mean by justice, social, economic, and political gradually starts tapering off. Unfortunately, post 1970s on, our idea of social justice is equal to reservations, and then our idea of economic justice is nothing but more of a poverty eradication rather than distributive justice. We, as a post-colonial republic, somehow couldn't muster the courage of our ancestors to creatively rethink what does it mean by redistributive justice and what does it mean by social justice. And let me tell you here, if it is the question of social justice, what kind of a change which should happen at a family level, at a personal level, at a community level, these kinds of thinking would have been instilled deeply, but unfortunately, the post 70s, till 70s, these debates are available, but post 70s, these debates gradually go back, and then populism in one or the other way becomes come to the fore. And then what we find post emergency, populism poses itself as democracy, and we want either a war or a death of a hero to win elections. Bangladesh war, this war, that war, and by 1984, what you could see, a death of a hero called Indira Gandhi. So I don't have anything against persons here, but what I would like to say is the core value which we embedded in the constitution. Somewhere it went wrong. And the second 25 years, what we could see is gradually, instead of deepening and widening the democratic ideas, populism started setting in. And let me put a proposition here. Those populist processes are now reincarnated in the other way. If the populism of 1970s is an elite kind of a populism, today's populism is more a plebeian kind of a populism, which you could see. Now, the second 25 comes to an end by 1990s, and let me tell you, bitterly, let me confess that once again, we had an opportunity very seriously to think about our economy as well as our society. The Mandal question, as well as the economic crisis which came in 1990, exactly after 40 years of India's independence. They gave us an opportunity to widely think about what does it mean by social justice and what does it mean by economic justice. What does it mean? What kind of a pathway which we should take? But unfortunately, our economic debate has been left to the experts because it is told we are now in a crisis. So to get out of the crisis, we want experts. And these experts will be democratically legitimized, but they will never put ideas to democratic debate. That's what kept happening in the world of economics. And in the world of social justice, once again, we were reducing the entire great idea of social justice, which is a very deeply connected with political and economic aspects. We reduced it to what we call as identitarian, caste-based, or identitarian ideas of reservation. It looks very easy to say जितना हमारा नंबर है उतना हमारा भागीदारी रहना चाहिए. Whatever is our number, we should get that much of a percentage and all that. On the face of it, it looks okay, but that is not. That is the crudest way of expression. Citizenship is the core, and dynamic assessment of where the citizen is standing at a given day, that has to be assessed. And hence, when people are talking today, the census operations from Manmohan Singh times to contemporary times, when people say caste census, I just loathe that word. The real word is socio-economic census. That should be there. No, let me come back. So we reduced the entire social justice dialogue to reservations, and our entire economic debate went into the hands of experts. That's how we started what we call as liberalization. An Indian liberal socialist class was uncreative to take what kind of a path it should take as this shock kind of a liberalization came in. What should be done is, especially now, I can use that word because I was just 22, 23 at that point of time. And then I could see what exactly the liberal left in India, which for quite some time was there to guide people. It doesn't mean that the scholars in conservative traditional knowledge were not there, but then from 1950s to 1970s, what I could see is the intellectual world was filled by these wonderful people. But somewhere, the 1990 crisis, the liberal left, or what I call as the liberal Hindus, to be very, very broad thing, lost creative ideas to guide people properly. And now market becomes the primary driver of everything. Once market becomes a primary driver of everything, it's another kind of an extremism. And it is called by Joseph Stiglitz and other people as market fundamentalism. As market fundamentalism comes in, what happens to the public goods? So how should we think about the state systems and all that. So in India, unfortunately, we don't even think seriously about state systems, how state system must be. So Claude Hoffe, O-F-F-E, Claude Hoffe was thinking about how welfare state, what kind of a welfare state will sustain and what kind of a welfare state doesn't sustain. A capitalist welfare state will not sustain. Claude Hoffe is telling somewhere in late 1970s and 80s. So we lost that political debate, and hence what we are seeing today is the product of the last opportunity of 1990s. And now, from here, for another 5 minutes, I will spend on what should we do at this point of time. I think there are two levels of it. Elections come and elections will go. Now, I am of the opinion no political party in India is not hating elections because it is the cheapest, best way to come into political power. Because it is not China, it is not Russia. You can't go on a coup and kill people and come to power. That is a costly affair. For example, a small people who are revolt or CPI-ML group revolt from 70s to 90s, it took lots of states' energy to control that small kind of a rebellion. So, Indian political class is very clear. It wants elections. It wants elections, and then it would like to make elections work for them. That's how system after system, government after government will love elections and equate elections with democracy. Let us go beyond elections. The first principle is let us think beyond elections. For people like me, it is a rosy roti kind of a thing because I have to analyze the election results and all that and teach and all that. But that is a professional part of it. But then let us grow beyond elections. Let us say elections is equal to democracy is a wrong equation. Let us say democracy is deeper than the elections may be a starting point of democracy, but can't be an end of it. What should happen between the elections? Are we able to see the governance? Because today, let me tell you, market is seeing us very closely. It is coming into our bedrooms. With cell phone, it is even listening to us. If you are good at social media, if you have some 5 or 6 kinds of, if you keep a kind of messages or a kind of writing, if you keep, suggestions of that kind will come to you. That is the algorithms of social media, or the algorithms of this meta world is. So market always looks at you. State has always had the tendency to look at us. So right from the times of Kautilya to contemporary times, state has all the mechanism to look at you. Today, state entered into our bedroom. Market has also entered into our bedroom. Do we have the abilities to look at market and the state? How should we look at the market and how should the first equation is let us move out of this election kind of a thing. Elections is equal to democracy. We have to dismantle this idea. Let elections is equal to democracy. If somebody is telling, we should say sorry, that is only a starting point. That cannot be equal to democracy. Now, the second important thing is the culture of looking at market and looking at the state. Because let me tell you, we are in a republican democracy. Market has to abide certain principles. State also has to abide certain principles, and citizen also has to abide by certain principles. Unfortunately, the citizens, are made to abide everything, but the market, neither market nor the state, are now ready to listen to us. So, develop the capacity to look at the market and look at the state. Let me delineate and tell you. Let us look at governance. I'll give you one example. Go to your local primary school. Start looking into it. Don't do anything. Engage with that school. You will know so many things, why it is like that. Go to your local Anganwadi. you will know so many things. What we can do, how we can contribute. So governance we have to look into, and also we have to be very, very closely following what markets are doing, especially to our mind, our health, and our community life, and our personal. To that extent, we have to revisit our older ways of living, our traditional ways of living, which keep ourselves away from the market. Today, I'll give you a very small example. I was suffering from a bad cramp in my right knee. I'm 52. I'm not a diabetic. Yesterday, it was once again proved I'm not a diabetic. And then my uric acid levels and other things are also in control. But somehow, a very, very wild cramp came in. I was not able to even walk. I was trying with some good memory and old knowledge. I was trying to get a kind of a herbal treatment to it. The herb's name is Vavilaku. In Sanskrit, it is called Nirgundi, which used to be everywhere in smaller villages, everywhere as hedges and all that. Mind you, today, where I live in Mehedipatnam, which is at the south end of Hyderabad, as you know. I was trying to get that herb because this herb is very popular because the nursing mothers and their pains were relieved by this. So people used to use this herb very easily. People were using it till 20-25 years back. Today, I have to search around 3 hours or 2.5 hours in search of this Nirgundi. I got it somehow and I made some decoction and drank it twice. And I made some patti of it on my this thing. I'm just giving one example of revisiting, because how should we ourselves deal with market? How should we keep ourselves away from market? Health is our program. I'm just giving one example. Health and medicine. If market is overtaking medicine, what should we do about health? So these kinds of questions we should say. So we should develop the ability to look at the market, question it. It may be very challenging thing, but we have to take the challenge because our ancestors took the challenge. So we have the independence. Our ancestors took challenge. So we have a democratic republic. So we have to take the challenge to save this democratic republic and make it go and grow. So we should develop the capacity to look at the state and look at the government and imbibe this quality to as many people as possible before we leave this wonderful place called India. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Harathi Vegeeshan. You gave a wonderful talk today. We are very happy that this talk is arranged on 75th Republic Day. We are all enlightened, in fact, because you have taken the idea of a republic right into the Puranas, and then you came to the modern concepts of it, and especially the way you have delineated the idea of fraternity, fraternity assuring the dignity of the individual. That is the fulcrum of the preamble of the Constitution. That was your wonderful contribution for today. And the second thing is you have divided the understanding of the concept in the modern post 1950s into from 1950s to 1975 and 1975 onwards up to 1990s and then onwards. And especially we know people who are concerned with the Indian history, Indian society. We know what are all the baggages which are troubling India, especially the partition of India, and then our relationship with Pakistan and China, and then the our what's called as integration of the princely states. Then the way India could resolve the issue of languages, especially the dialogue between the Hindi and the southern languages, and the emergency 1975, and in the late 1980s, three issues which have entered into Indian society. That is the Mandal issue, then the Mandir issue, and then the new economic policy. These are all some of the deciding factors of the Indian society. But I just quote one thing that Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia once said, that in most of the countries, the struggle between the liberal and the conservative forces have reached a particular stage of resolution in most of the countries. Whereas in India, the struggle between the liberals and the conservatives has not yet reached a definite stage. That is, it is neither getting into the definite stage, only it's only playing something called as a seesaw game. Once the liberals get higher hold, and then conservatives will get higher hold. However, India is the thing which cannot be understood and discussed in a single pattern, but with reference to our wonderful freedom struggle, anti-colonial, the greatest anti-colonial struggle ever held on the world scenario. Whenever I talk about this particular issue, and when people talk about Russian Revolution, French Revolution, American Revolution, all European revolutions, civilized revolutions, I say that with all the comparisons, I consider the Indian freedom struggle as the most complex one and held on a larger scale. So, most of the present issues which we are discussing have their origins in that 100 years of Indian history between 1850s to 1950. So, thank you very much, and then you have wonderfully made the idea of republicanism, and then how it is finally democracy is equated into elections, and then certain of the other areas which you have touched are so wonderful. We are all very much thankful to you. Now I open the discussion, and as usual, I request all the participants to be as sharp as possible while questioning. Don't make it a counter lecture. That would be, if you have a material worth the counter lecture, I always invite you to give another lecture on any Friday of your choice. So let us be brief in the questioning. So I welcome Professor Balmohan Das Garu, our what's called as our leader, to start the session. Welcome, sir. Please.
Thank you,
Professor
Kumar.
Balmohan Das Garu is the former Vice Chancellor of Nagarjuna University, sir. This is my just introduction to all the people who are new to the session.
Thank you for making me leader without any election.
Yeah,
I'm very happy about it.
I'm a pleader, you are a leader.
It was, I think, very good for all of us to hear Dr. Vageeshan on the Republic Day talking about Republic. I think the subject has been so wonderfully dealt, right from Puranic age to the present age, referring to lots of things that we have not heard. Today morning, when I was, I think, at the Republic Day function, people said flag hoisting and unfurling. They don't know the difference between hoisting and the unfurling of the flags also, unfortunately, these days. It is time that all of us should get educated. And on a Republic Day, listening on this topic is wonderful. I am really benefited because as a student and a teacher of management studies, I was conversant only with the political environment and its effect on business environment, not on the legal studies as Raukumar, I think lawyers, they're experts. Very happy to know. But I have a few questions. I came across a word called banana republic. Banana republic. I know generally it is say you probably live in a maybe island run by a dictator, or you are spending too much time at the mail. People call it that way. But is there any beyond that, anything reference to that? And talking about the democracies, I find full democracy, flawed democracy, hybrid democracy, authoritarian regimes like this is lots of things there. But in the period that you have quoted about the 75 years, dividing it into 3 phases, I don't know whether we had all these reflecting in our operations as such. And I was thinking that you also refer Ramarajya. Ramarajya and whenever you talk of good governance, Ramarajya is highlighted, and especially after Ayodhya, we talk about this. And it was nice of you that you have referred to something like Pandavas and Kauravas, Sanjaya's diplomacy. But now we are facing the same problem in Andhra Pradesh between Jagan and Sharmila. That is what is happening in Andhra Pradesh. Unfortunately or unfortunately, I don't know, because I don't belong to any political party. I am a citizen. Whoever I voted to different parties at different points of time. And I have one more doubt. I don't know why President of India and governors in our constitution, they have been exempted, say, from the criminal proceedings and also not answerable to any court. During their term, they are not allowed. I think that way we are making them supreme. I don't know. I feel sometimes they should be subjected to like any citizen. These are my few comments. Thank you, Dr. Vegeeshan.
Thank you. Vageeshan, please reserve all the questions for your final summing up. And in the meanwhile, I invite Dr. Rao V.B. Chelikani, one of the well-known international figure from our Tarnaka. So welcome, sir. Please, you have to unmute yourself. You have to unmute yourself. He's a double doctorate in French constitutional law and also American constitutional law.
Thank you, sir. More than that, I think I must say that I'm a student of Professor R.V.R. Chandrasekhar Rao. He was in the Andhra University. He taught me constitutional history. So that's where I would like to refer to the context of our why India is called a republican democracy and not a people's democracy. As you know, that's the first part of it. I would like to see the historical context in which it is called republican democracy and not people's democracy. And the second is that we'll come to that. The first point is that when the Britishers were ruling in 1947 Act, it became a dominion status. We have received a dominion status from there, and then it is a matter of a political expediency at that time between the Indian Constituent Assembly members and then British education they had received. In Britain, we have a constitutional monarchy. It's not full democracy as we have been experiencing at that time already in China and in Russia. So it was a constitutional monarchy, and most of the people who participated in the Constituent Assembly discussions, most of the dominant people, they belong to a pro-socialist thinking. Jawaharlal Nehru himself was a Fabian socialist, and H.J. Lasky and other philosophers have influenced a lot. So it was a political expediency in the sense they don't want to call it people's democracy, because even in Great Britain also at that time, still in the 50s, it was a feudal representation. Representatives are feudals. And it suited the Indian context also. In India, when we wanted to make a union, we are in face of the princes and independent states. We have to include them. So if we make a popular democracy, it will be difficult to convince them and bring in. So we have to conceive a democracy which is acceptable, and at that form, it is called more a republican than a people's democracy. And since then, the term republic also has got two connotations. It has never been fully a democracy. Even right now, the French Republic is more people's democracy than it is less people's democracy than a constitutional monarchy. So the president, that means in a people's democracy, representatives of the people are dominant. Whereas in republic, one leader, however, with the popular support, a leader is prominent. Like the previous king, now one leader is elected. And that's why in most of the republics, you have the plebiscite or referendum. So the leader consults the people and gets the consent to be the head, the leader. So that is the reason why we are not a fully republic. We are not a fully people's democracy, but we called it a kind of republican democracy to compromise and then make it acceptable to everybody. That was my understanding of how it happened. And now the second part of it, which I would like to say, is that Dr. Vageeshan's description of the state of politics now indicates that we need a democracy, not the people's democracy, not representative democracy. We need a participatory democracy. We don't need middlemen to guide and then decide the destiny of the people. We need people themselves to participate directly and decide for themselves collectively. So this is a new democracy that has to come, and that is the time that I think our constitution, being what it is for arriving at that to exist as a democracy, it was formed as an expedient measure. Now I think it needs to be revised, making the people citizen sovereign, where the citizen is sovereign. And today our parliament members say that parliament is sovereign, not the state, not the people. So we have to come to a new democracy by revising the constitution, and we cannot expect the present representatives to change the constitution. So we need people's participation to change the constitution to a new democracy, which will be a participatory democracy. I think that is the conclusion I draw from Dr. Vageeshan's analysis of the present situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. May I have the voice of Sandeep ji? Sandeep ji, the General Secretary of the Socialist Party of India, and he recently returned his Magsaysay Award, Raman Magsaysay Award, in protest against the Israel stand of the British government and European governments on the Israel-Palestina war issue. So
Yeah.
he returned the award. Sandeep ji, please.
Thank you, Raghu Kumar ji. I have just one very short question for Vageeshan. So, in our democratic republic, president is kind of the face of the republic. So, I would like to know from him how the authority of the president is being undermined now. She was not invited to the parliament's inauguration. And when Narendra Modi laid the foundation of the temple, whereas he was there, Chief Minister of UP was there, Governor of UP was there, and now when the temple was inaugurated, everybody was there. Former judges were there, who were part of the judgments. But the president in whose time the judgment was given for temple and the current president, both of them were absent, So can he comment something on the authority of the president, as, we see it to be undermined? That's all.
Thank you. Thank you. Dr. Muralidhar. Dr. Muralidhar.
Sir, good evening, sir. Yeah, today is a very quite interesting topic from Vageeshan. అదే టాపిక్ అంటే ఒకటి ఈరోజు రిపబ్లిక్ డే దినోత్సవము, రెండవది వచ్చేసి నేను కూడా 1-2 స్కూల్స్ అటెండ్ అయినాను యాజ్ ఎ గెస్ట్. పిల్లల్ని అడిగినాను ఇంతకీ రిపబ్లిక్ దినోత్సవం అంటే ఏంటి అనేసి. అన్ఫార్చునేట్లీ పిల్లలు ఎవరు కూడా చెప్పలేకపోయినారు. ఇది వాళ్ళకు 8వ క్లాస్లో ఉంది, 9వ క్లాస్లో ఉంది, 10వ క్లాస్లో కూడా ఈ సబ్జెక్ట్ అన్నటువంటిది ఉంది. రిపబ్లిక్ డే అంటే ఏంటంటే గణతంత్ర దినోత్సవం అన్నారు. గణతంత్ర దినోత్సవం ఏందనంటే రిపబ్లిక్ డే అనేసి అన్నారు. ఇది ఇంకా ఇటనే కంటిన్యూ అవుతుంది అని చెప్పేసి నాకు అర్థమైనటువంటిది ఇప్పుడు నాకు చెలికాని గారు మాట్లాడిన తర్వాత కొద్దిగా కన్ఫ్యూజన్ అయితే ఉంది. నేను ఉన్నటువంటిది అభిప్రాయం ఏమనంటే, మనమే ఈ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ అన్నటువంటిది రాసుకున్నాము, మన తరఫున ఒక 299 మంది కాన్స్టిట్యూయెంట్ అసెంబ్లీలో మెంబర్స్ గా ఉండి మన తరఫున వాళ్ళు రాసినారు. వాళ్ళకంతా బాబాసాహెబ్ అంబేద్కర్ హెడ్ గా ఉండి ఈ కార్యక్రమం అంతా నిర్వహించబడింది. వి ద పీపుల్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియా అన్నటువంటి దాంతో మొదలవుతుంది. కాబట్టి అసలు నేను ఇది మన పీపుల్స్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ అనేసే ఇంతవరకు అనుకుంటున్నాను. ఆ ఉద్దేశంతో సరే నిజంగా అది ఆచరణలో సాధ్యమవుతుందా కావడం లేదా అని అంటే, భారత ప్రజలమైనటువంటి మేము ఈ రోజు ఈ భారతదేశానికి సంబంధించినటువంటి యజమానులు అని చెప్పేసి మనం ఎక్కడికి పోయినా, కలెక్టర్ ఆఫీసు పోయినా కానీ సరే వాడు మనల్ని ఎగాదిగా చూస్తాడు. నేనే కదా యజమాని, నువ్వు కదా నా సర్వెంటు అని అంటే కలెక్టర్ ఆఫీస్ లో ఉన్నటువంటి క్లర్క్ కూడా ఒప్పుకోడు. ఎందుకంటే అతడే యజమాని లాగా ఫీల్ అవుతూ ఉంటాడు. ఒక క్లర్కే యజమాని లాగా ఫీల్ అయితే కలెక్టర్ ఏ లెవెల్లో ఫీల్ కావాలా? కలెక్టరే ఆ లెవెల్లో ఫీల్ అయితే ఒక రిప్రజెంటేటివ్ ఎమ్మెల్యే ఏ రకంగా ఫీల్ కావాలా? ఇదంతా కూడా కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ రాసుకోవడంలో ఏమన్నా తేడాలు అన్నటువంటివి జరిగినాయా, లేదా దాని ఇంప్లిమెంటేషన్ లో మాత్రమే తేడాలు అన్నటువంటివి ఉన్నాయా? ఈ రకమైనటువంటి స్పృహ మేము సేవకులము అన్నటువంటి స్పృహ ఎందుకు మనకున్నటువంటి రిప్రజెంటేటివ్స్ కొరవడింది? మనము సేవకులము అన్నటువంటి స్పృహ ఎందుకు గవర్నమెంట్ ఎంప్లాయీస్ కొరవడింది? మనం యజమానంలో అన్నటువంటి స్పృహ ఎందుకు మనం ప్రజలకు కలిగించలేకపోయినాము? ఈ రకంగా కలిగించలేకపోవడానికి కారణము బేసిక్ గా కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ లో ఉందా, లేదా దాని అప్లికేషన్ లో ఉందా? దిస్ ఈస్ మై క్వశ్చన్, సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ.
Thank you very much, sir. Now may I request Sudhimati garu. సుధీమతి గారు మీరు లైన్ లో ఉన్నారా?
ఉన్నానండి. ఇవాళ చాలా యాప్ట్ గా టాపిక్ తీసుకున్నారు. నేను పెద్దగా మాట్లాడడానికి లేదు, క్వశ్చన్ వేయడానికి లేదు, కానీ నా అబ్జర్వేషన్ లో ఏంటంటే, నా చిన్నతనానికి ఇప్పటికి క్రమేపీ అసలు రిపబ్లిక్ డే ఎందుకు చేసుకోవాలి, అసలు మనకి అవసరం ఏంటి, ఇది మనకి సంబంధించిందేనా అనే ఫీలింగ్ జనరల్ ప్రజల్లో చాలా వచ్చేసింది అనిపిస్తుంది. ఒకప్పుడు ఇది మనది, మన దేశం, మన పండగ అనుకునేవాళ్ళు. ఇప్పుడు అది మనది కాదు, ఎవరో పొలిటికల్ లీడర్స్ జెండా ఎగరేసుకుంటారు. స్కూల్ పిల్లలు కంపల్సరీ కాబట్టి వెళ్తారు, అది కూడా గవర్నమెంట్ స్కూల్స్, ప్రైవేట్ స్కూల్స్ కి ఏం సంబంధం లేదు. ఇలాగా ఇది కొంతమందికే పరిమితం అయిపోయింది అనేది నాకు మాత్రం చాలా బాధగా ఉంటుంది. ఈ అవేర్నెస్ ఎలా కలిగించాలి? ఇది మన దేశము, మన బాధ్యత. నేను ఈ దేశం పౌరుడిని, లేకపోతే ఈ దేశంలో ఉన్నాను, ఈ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ కి నేను కట్టుబడాలి, ఏమిటో తెలుసుకోవాలి అనే ఉద్దేశం అసలు ఎలా కలిగించాలి ప్రజల్లో అనేది నాకు ఆలోచించే విషయం ఇలాంటి సందర్భాలు. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. ఉషా గారు మీరు లైన్ లో ఉన్నారా? ఉషాజీ.
నమస్తే అండి, అందరికి నమస్కారం. ఇది చాలా బాగుందండి సెషన్. అంటే నాకు మొత్తం అర్థం చేసుకునేంత చెప్పలేను, కానీ ఆ రిపబ్లిక్ ని అసలు ఇంట్రొడ్యూస్ చేయటమే చాలా బాగుందండి. రిపబ్లిక్ అనేది అంటే ఎవరికి అధికారాన్ని ఇవ్వదు, ఒక రూల్స్ ని కట్టుబడి ఉండటం. కాబట్టి అది పూర్వకాలం నుంచి కూడా అది అంగీకరించబడలేదు, దాన్ని కాదంటూ వచ్చింది ఆ అధికార పక్షం, అదేదైతే అది దాన్నే ఇవాళ ఇది కూడా చెప్తూ, అది అంటే అసలు ఎవరికైనా కూడా ఇండివిజువల్స్ కూడా అది ఎందుకు కష్టం అంటే, వాళ్ళు కూడా కాదని రూల్కి అంటే వాళ్ళే ఏర్పాటు చేసుకున్న దానికి ప్రాధాన్యత ఇవ్వాల్సి వస్తుంది కాబట్టి అన్నారు. అది చాలా చాలా క్యాచీగా చాలా బాగుంది. ఇంకా చాలా చెప్పారు. ఫ్రాటర్నిటీ అనే దాని మీద కూడా ధర్మరాజు ఇది
ఎవరిదో మైక్ ఆన్ లో ఉంది, కైండ్లీ మ్యూట్ ఇట్. ఎవరిదో మైక్ ఆన్ లో ఉంది, ప్లీజ్ కైండ్లీ మ్యూట్ ఇట్. మేడం మాట్లాడండి.
అది అంటే నేను అది ప్రత్యేకంగా చెప్పాలనుకున్నాను. చాలా బాగుంది, చాలా వివరంగా ఆ మైన్యూట్ డిఫరెన్సెస్ చెప్పారు. ఇది మళ్ళీ విని ఇంకొంచెం తెలుసుకోవాలి. మీరు ఎలాగో రికార్డింగ్ పెడతారు కాబట్టి దాన్ని నోట్ చేసుకుంటూ తెలుసుకోవాల్సిన విషయాలు చాలా ఉన్నాయి.
సార్ జియోమి 23076 మీరు మ్యూట్ చేసుకోండి ప్లీజ్. మీరు మ్యూట్ చేసుకోండి. జియోమి 23076.
1250.
ప్లీజ్ కంటిన్యూ. ఇప్పుడు చెరుకుల వెంకటరెడ్డి గారు, సార్ మీరు ఏమైనా మాట్లాడతారా? చెరుకుల వెంకటరెడ్డి గారు. ఓకే. కృష్ణమోహన్.
Yeah, okay. Today is a very good topic you have chosen, and he has accepted for this, and he has done it very, very well. And my only question is, on one side, we are moving ahead with comparatively with many other countries. We are doing well, whether it is security or safety or economy, everything is okay. On the other side, there is a lot of poverty. There is no respect for the constitution also, it seems, it appears to be. And how do we rate the respecting our constitution? See, when you see the political leaders, how they are doing, Modi is the only one doing everything for the country, and Jagan is the only person doing for the Andhra Pradesh. And that's how things are happening. When KCR was there, he was the only person doing everything for Telangana. How long it will go like that? And why we are not able to tackle the poverty, keeping our economy also well at the same time? Why there should be a lot of divide between haves and have-nots even today? After 75 years of the constitution, we have adopted and we are following it. And how the legal people will act on that, and how do they view about this? There are a lot of differences. On one side, we are doing okay, safety, security, we are doing well across the world. And the other side, we have our own problems facing. And why Modi should be alone doing for the country? There is no delegation. As rightly said, the why President of India was not involved, and what respect we have got for the President of India. And when Modi is the only person went into the temple, keeping the richest person outside the temple under the sun, like any other citizen, for 3 to 4 hours like that. And he has attended also at the same time. Whether we should credit Modi for that, or what is the system we are adopting, keeping all these people outside, alone Modi is going inside. That we should look at. But anyhow, he has resolved the problem of Ayodhya, which is there for a long time. And so that's how I am unable to judge the our things in happening in this country. Let us let him answer for these things. He has done it well, very well, on this day of Republic Day. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Kasarla Rangarao garu. Kasarla Rangarao garu.
ముఖ్యంగా మన గ్రూప్లో ఉన్న పొలిటికల్ సైన్స్ సబ్జెక్ట్గా తెలియని వాళ్లకు చాలా విషయాలు తెలియజేశారు. అందుకు మొదటగా కృతజ్ఞతలు. నా జీవితంలో మొదటి 15-20 సంవత్సరాలు గ్రామాల్లో గడిచింది. గ్రామాల్లో ఏ కులం వారైనా ఏ ఇల్లైనా చాలా విశాలంగా ఉండేది, చాలా స్థలం ఉండేది. వాళ్ళు చదువుకొని పట్టణాలకు వలస వచ్చిన తర్వాత ఇరుకిరుకు జీవితాలు, కాంపిటేటివ్ జీవితాలు చాలా తేడా వచ్చింది. అంటే ఇప్పుడు గ్రామీణ వాతావరణం ఎందుకు నశింపజేసిండ్రు? గ్రామీణ ఆర్థిక వ్యవస్థ ఎందుకు పతనం అయిపోయింది? గాంధీ మహాత్ముడు గ్రామీణ వ్యవస్థను బలోపేతం చేయాలన్నారు. మరి తర్వాత ఏ విధంగా పరిణమించింది? ఇదొక విషయం. ఇంకొక విషయం, దుబాయ్ చంద్రశేఖర్ అనేవాడు, ఒక బ్రోకర్ అనేవాడు ఉద్యమాలు చేసి అధికారంలోకి వచ్చి తనకు తోచిన విధంగా చేసి అది ప్రజలకు అంగీకారం కానప్పుడు పవర్ నుంచి దిగిపోయిండు. ఇది సాధారణంగా మనం చూసే రష్యన్, చైనా ఇటువంటి విషయాల్లో ఏది జరగదు. అది నియంతృత్వం, చంపుకోవడం, బీభత్సమైన వాతావరణం జరుగుతుంది. మరి ఇంత పరిణితి మన ప్రజలకు వచ్చింది, సిటిజన్స్కి వచ్చింది. ఇంకా ఉన్న లోపాలు ఏమైనా ఉన్నాయో అవి సవరించుకోవాలి. ఇది నా అభిప్రాయం. థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. థ్యాంక్ యూ. ప్రకాష్, please unmute.
Very timely topic. No questions. Give time for him to answer.
Okay. Now I think ఇంకెవరన్నా నేను మర్చిపోయా. టీవీఎస్ రమేష్ గారు, please let us be very sharp because we are already crossing our normal time. సో టీవీఎస్ రమేష్ గారు.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్. ఇవాళ ఒక మంచి కార్యక్రమాన్ని విని ఏర్పాటు చేసినందుకు మీకు ధన్యవాదాలు. అయితే నాది ఒక చిన్న ప్రశ్న. మన రాజ్యాంగం ప్రకారం అటు ఆదేశ సూత్రాలు ఇటు హక్కులు రెండు ఉన్నప్పటికీ కూడా మనకి హక్కులకు ఇచ్చినంత ప్రాధాన్యత ఎందుకు ఈ డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ కి ఇవ్వలేకపోయాం? ఇది కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ లో ఉన్నటువంటి వ్యత్యాసమా అన్న విషయం గురించి కూడా ఒకసారి వక్త గారు మాట్లాడితే బాగుంటుందని అనిపిస్తుంది. చాలా మంచి కార్యక్రమాన్ని ఏర్పాటు చేసినందుకు మీకు సార్కి ఇద్దరికి కూడా హృదయపూర్వక ధన్యవాదాలు సార్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. కృష్ణరాము గారు. కృష్ణరాము
సార్ నమస్తే సార్.
నమస్తే, ప్లీజ్
సార్. ఇందాక సందీప్ గారు అడిగారు ఒక క్వశ్చన్. ప్రెసిడెంట్ గారిని ఆనర్ చేయకుండా అన్ని విషయాల్లో కూడా ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టరే రాజ్యాంగం ప్రకారం ఆయనకు ప్రెసిడెంట్ గారికి ఇచ్చిన అధికారం కూడా ప్రైమ్ మినిస్టర్ లాగేసుకుంటున్నట్టు అనిపిస్తుంది. ఆ సందేహాన్ని తీర్చాలని అడుగుతున్నారు సార్.
థ్యాంక్ యూ. ఇంకెవరైనా వాలంటీర్గా వచ్చేవాళ్ళు ఉన్నారండి? నేను పిలవని వాళ్ళు, నన్ను గమనించని వాళ్ళు వాలంటీర్గా 1 or 2 ప్లీజ్ ఏమైనా ఉంటే మాట్లాడండి. మళ్ళీ నేను ప్రత్యేకంగా పిలవలేదని మీరు కూడా బాధపడద్దు. ఓకే, నౌ వి రివర్ట్ బ్యాక్ టు Vageeshan ji. Sir, మీరు యూ కెన్ బ్రీఫ్లీ రెస్పాండ్ టు దెమ్. నౌ వీఆర్ అట్ 7:39 అంటే 7:40. You can take some 10 minutes. It would be, I think, better.
ఇక్కడ గృహంలో ఇంట్లో కూడా డిమాండ్లు వస్తున్నాయి బయటించి. అయితే ఒకటి క్లబ్ చేసి వీటన్నిటి ఇచ్చేస్తాను. బాలమోహన్ దాస్ గారు రేస్ చేసినటువంటి ఆ బనానా రిపబ్లిక్ అనేటటువంటి మాట లాటిన్ అమెరికాలో ఉన్నటువంటి బలహీనమైన దేశాలు, అంటే బలహీనమైన పేద దేశాలు, బలహీనమైన ప్రభుత్వాలు, ఈ కాంబినేషన్ ని బనానా రిపబ్లిక్ అనడం అది ఇటిమలాజికల్ గా అక్కడి నుంచి స్టార్ట్ అయింది. సో ఏ రిపబ్లిక్ అయితే అందులో చాలా నియంతృత్వమైన పరిపాలన, సరైన ఒక నియంతృత్వమైన పరిపాలన ఉంటే దాన్ని అనడం బనానా రిపబ్లిక్ అని మాట్లాడడం వస్తా ఉంది. అయితే ఇప్పుడు ప్రెసిడెంట్, గవర్నరు వీళ్ళను ఎందుకు ప్రాసిక్యూషన్ అంటే వాళ్ళ అధికారంలో ఉన్నప్పుడు ప్రాసిక్యూషన్ నుంచి బయటికి పెట్టాలి అనే విషయానికి వస్తే బహుశా కొన్ని సంప్రదాయాల్ని పాటిస్తూ ఆ పని చేశారేమో కానీ అబ్సల్యూట్ కార్ట్ బ్లాంచే అంట కదా, అంటే పూర్తిగా వాళ్ళు చేసే మొత్తం వాళ్ళు పదవిలోంచి దిగిపోయినప్పటికీ వాళ్ళకు శిక్ష ఏమీ ఉండదు అనే పరిస్థితి ఏం లేదు. కాకపోతే ఆ స్థానంలో ఉన్నప్పుడు ఇవ్వాలనేటటువంటి కన్వెన్షన్ దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని ఆ పని చేయడం జరిగింది అనేది మనకు అర్థం అవుతూ వస్తుంది. బట్ ఎట్ ది సేమ్ టైం రాష్ట్రపతిని తొలగించడానికి విధి విధానాలు ఉన్నాయి. గవర్నర్ ను చాలా 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 సులభమైన పద్ధతుల్లోనే గవర్నర్ ను తొలగించే విధి విధానాలు ఉన్నాయి. అయితే ఈ వ్యవస్థలు బలహీనపడడానికి కొన్ని డైనమిక్ రీజన్స్ ఉన్నాయి. ఇంకా కొంచెం మాట్లాడుతూ పోతాం కదా కిందికి, అప్పుడు ఆ డైనమిక్ రీజన్స్ ఏంటో కూడా నేను దాంట్లో తెలియజెప్తాను. అదొకటి. తర్వాత ఇక దీనికి క్రిందికి మన ప్రెసిడెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఇండియాను చాలా అండర్మైన్ చేయడం జరుగుతుందా అని సందీప్ గారు ఇంకొక మిత్రులు అడిగారు. గవర్నర్ గాని రాష్ట్రపతి గాని బలంగా ఉండాలంటే వాస్తవానికి భారతదేశపు ప్రాసెస్ లో కాస్త రిలేటివ్లీ తక్కువ మెజారిటీ ఉండే పార్లమెంటు, తక్కువ మెజారిటీ ఉండేటటువంటి శాసనసభలు ఉన్నప్పుడే గవర్నర్లు కానీ లేకపోతే రాష్ట్రపతులు కానీ రిలేటివ్ గా పవర్ఫుల్ గా ఉన్నటువంటి దాఖలాలు ఉన్నాయి. అట్లా కానప్పుడు కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ పరంగానే నిజంగా చెప్పాలంటే గవర్నర్ కి రాష్ట్రపతి కంటే కొన్ని అంశాల్లో డిస్క్రిషనరీ పవర్స్ ఎక్కువ ఉన్నాయి. గవర్నర్ వాస్తవానికి గట్టిగా తలుచుకుంటే చాలా వరకు రాష్ట్రంలో ఉండే ప్రభుత్వాలకి కొంత గట్టి ఛాలెంజ్ నే ఇచ్చే పరిస్థితి ఉంటుంది. కానీ అది పక్కకు పెడదాం. రాష్ట్రపతుల్ని ఎంపిక చేసుకోవడం, రాష్ట్రపతుల్ని ఎంపిక చేసుకున్న తర్వాత వాళ్ళని బాగా సైడ్ లైన్ చేయడం అనేటటువంటిది ఒక పొలిటికల్ కల్చర్ గా మనకు డెవలప్ అయింది. దాదాపు వాళ్ళను కూడా అంటే ఏపీజే అబ్దుల్ కలాం గారి తర్వాత మనకు ఒక ఇండిపెండెంట్ డిసెంటింగ్ వాయిస్ ని ఇవ్వగలిగిన అవసరం అయితే సందర్భం వస్తే డిసెంటింగ్ వాయిస్ ఇవ్వగలిగినటువంటి మనుషుల్ని ఆ స్థానాల్లోకి కూర్చోబెట్టకూడదు అనేటటువంటి కాన్సెన్సస్ ఏదో ఉంది అనిపిస్తుంది. సో దాంతో ఆ రకమైన మనుషుల్ని అక్కడ కూర్చోబెట్టడంతో వాళ్ళు కూడా అసర్ట్ చేసుకోవట్లేదు, తమ స్పేస్ అసర్ట్ చేసుకోవడం లేదనేది నా అభిప్రాయం. ఎందుకంటే మనది బేసిక్ గానే పార్లమెంటరీ డెమోక్రసీ కాబట్టి హెడ్ ఆఫ్ ది స్టేట్ కంటే హెడ్ ఆఫ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్ కు స్పేస్ ఎక్కువ ఉంటుంది. అది దాని బై నేచర్, బై ఇట్స్ నేచర్ ది హెడ్ ఆఫ్ ది గవర్నమెంట్ హూ ఇస్ elected by the members of the parliament or members of the legislature. They will have more power because the system is built like that. But nevertheless, it seems that there is a political culture which is going in, that where when you're bringing in people, especially into the chambers of President of India, it seems that they are bringing people who probably will be toying more with the line of government than who use their independent agency. That's what is happening. So it is more a political kind of a thing. It's not basically a constitutional kind of a thing which is happening, and then it's very unfortunate that it must not have happened in that way. That's one. మేము సేవకులం అన్న స్పృహ ఎందుకు కలగట్లేదు అనేది చాలా చాలా ఇంపార్టెంట్ ప్రశ్న ఇది. నేను అనుకుంటాను ప్రజాస్వామ్యం అనేది రాగానే పాత ప్రపంచం ఆటోమేటిక్ గా రద్దయిపోతుంది అనుకోవడం అబద్ధం. మనం ప్రజాస్వామ్య పూర్వ సంప్రదాయాలతో బతుకుతుంటాం. అసలు వాస్తవానికి ప్రజాస్వామ్యానికి ఉన్న అంటే రిప్రజెంటేటివ్ డెమోక్రసీ అండ్ ఇట్స్ ఏజ్ యాక్చువల్లీ ఈజ్ ఓన్లీ 200, 250, 300 years, not more than that. బట్ ఓల్డర్ సిస్టమ్స్ ఆఫ్ రూలింగ్, వాడు రాజోద్యోగి అంటే వాడు రాజు కంటే బింకంగా ఉంటాడు. మీరు చూసుకుంటే వీళ్ళు కూడా అదే అనుకుంటున్నారు, ప్రభుత్వం రాజోద్యోగి అనుకునే మానసిక స్థితి ఉంది. తర్వాత వాళ్ళకి రకరకాలైనటువంటి ఆ ప్రొసీజరల్ ఆస్పెక్ట్స్ లో వాళ్ళకు కొంత పవర్ కూడా ఉండడము, వాళ్ళ పవర్ఫుల్ పొజిషన్స్ లో ఉండడంతో వాళ్ళకి వీఆర్ రిప్రజెంటెడ్ ఏ కాన్స్టిట్యూషనల్ సిస్టమ్ అని కానీ వీఆర్ రూల్ బౌండ్ అని కానీ అనిపించడం అనేది కొంచెం తక్కువనే ఉంది. అయితే 1970 దాకా కనీసం సర్వెంట్స్ అట్లా మేము ఒక కొత్త ప్రపంచాన్ని సృష్టించే ప్రయత్నం చేస్తున్నాం అన్న సెన్స్ కాన్షియస్నెస్ ఉండింది అనుకుంటాను. ఈ రోజు మీ ముందు నిలబడి నేను మాట్లాడుతున్నానంటే నాకు అనిపిస్తుంది మాకు పాఠశాలలో పాఠాలు చెప్పిన టీచర్లు అందరూ కూడా చాలా నిబద్ధతతోనే పనిచేశారు. మేము ఈ పిల్లలకు కొత్త విషయాలు నేర్పించాలి, కొత్త ప్రపంచంలోకి మేము నడుస్తున్నాం అనేటటువంటిది ఏదో వాళ్ళ మూలనైతే కనిపించేది. అది రాను తగ్గిపోవడానికి కారణం నాకు అనిపిస్తుంది, నేను నా ప్రసంగంలో కూడా చెప్పాను, ప్రజాస్వామ్యం అంటే ఎన్నికలు మాత్రమే అనే చోటికి దిగిపోయిన తర్వాత పౌరుడు అన్న భావన, ఓటరు అన్న భావనకి దిగి కుదించబడ్డ తర్వాత సోషల్ జస్టిస్ అన్నమాట వెల్ఫేరిజంలోకి మారిపోయిన తర్వాత క్రమేణా ఇవన్నీ అయిపోయి మేము ఇచ్చేవాళ్ళం, మీరు తీసుకునేవాళ్ళు, నేను పవర్ పొజిషన్ లో ఉన్నాను, నువ్వు నా మాట వినాలి అనే ఇది వచ్చింది. మీరు చూడండి ఈ కల్చరు ఇప్పుడు మార్కెట్ శక్తులకు కూడా అదే వచ్చింది. ప్రైవేట్ మొనోపలీస్ ఉన్నాయనుకోండి, మీకు ఒక ఎయిర్టెల్ ఆఫీస్ పోతే కొంచెం ఫ్రంట్ ఆఫీస్ లో నవ్వుతూ మాట్లాడతారు కానీ లోపల ఉండే వాళ్ళందరి యాటిట్యూడ్ అదే. అంటే ఈవెన్ కార్పొరేట్ హౌసెస్ అలవాటు కూడా అట్లానే ఉంటుంది అనమాట. వాళ్ళు ఇంకా ఇర్రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ గా మాట్లాడుతున్న పరిస్థితి ఉంది. ఇక్కడ కనీసం గవర్నమెంట్ ఆఫీస్ లో ఆర్టీఐకో దానికో దీనికో గొంతుకో 10 మందిని ఎంబడేసుకొని పోతే నన్ను భయపడతానేమో కానీ అక్కడ అది కూడా లేని పరిస్థితి ఉంది. సో ఒక పాతకాలపు బాధ్యత రాహిత్య ప్రవర్తన బహుశా ఒకటి ఎంబెడ్ అయి కూర్చుంది, దాన్ని తొలగించాల్సి ఉంటుంది. అక్కడ నేను శ్రీమతి గారి దగ్గరికి వెళ్తాను. ఆవిడ చాలా ఈ ప్రశ్నకి చాలా సంబంధం ఉంది. ఆవిడ ఏమన్నారంటే మనము మనది, ఇది మనది అన్న అంటే ఈ రాజ్యాంగం మనది, ఈ రాజ్యం మనది, మనకు కొంత రెస్పాన్సిబిలిటీ ఉంది సెన్స్. మనం బహుశా వ్యక్తులుగా మారిపోతున్నాం, సముదాయాలుగా మారడాన్ని మర్చిపోయాము అని నేను అనుకుంటున్నాను. రంగారావు గారు కూడా ఆ మాట అన్నారు, ఊర్లో విశాలంగా ఉండేది నగరానికి వచ్చేంత సంకుచితమైన. అసలు ఈ సంకుచితంగా మారడం అనేది ఏంటంటే బహుశా నేను అనుకుంటాను ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ ఆర్ ఇండియన్ ఫ్రీడమ్ స్ట్రగుల్ ఫర్ దట్ మ్యాటర్ వ్యక్తిని కేంద్రంగా లేకపోతే సముదాయాన్ని నూతనంగా నిర్వచించాలి అనేటటువంటి ఒక ప్రోగ్రామ్ తీసుకుంది. అంటే పాత సముదాయాల స్థానంలో కొత్త సముదాయాల్ని సృష్టించాలి. కొత్త వ్యక్తి, కొత్త సముదాయం. మనం కొత్త మనుషుల్ని సృష్టించగలిగినాం, ఎంతో అంతో ఇండివిజువల్స్ తయారు చేయగలిగినాం, కానీ సముదాయాన్ని సృష్టించడంలో చాలా ఘోరంగానే మనం విఫలమవుతున్నాం. అందువల్లనే మనం అన్న భావన కానీ, మనం అంతా ఒక రెస్పాన్సిబుల్ గా దీన్ని తీసుకోవాలన్న భావన కలగట్లేదు. దీనికి పరిష్కారం నాకు అనిపిస్తుంది, ది సొల్యూషన్ లైజ్ ఇన్ సిస్టమాటికలీ వర్కింగ్ ఇన్ వెరీ స్మాల్ ఫ్యాషన్ ఇన్ అండ్ అరౌండ్ అవర్ సెల్ఫ్. ప్రతి చోట, ప్రతి చిన్న చిన్న చోట్లలో మనం అన్న భావాన్ని పెంచడానికి కావాల్సిన అతి చిన్న చిన్న ప్రయత్నాలు చేస్తూ ఉంటే, లొకాలిటీస్ లో, ఫ్యామిలీస్ లో, ఇక్కడ మనం బేసిక్ గా ఈ మనం అన్న కాన్సెప్ట్ ను పెంపొందించడానికి వీ షుడ్ కీప్ ఆన్ వర్కింగ్ ఇన్ అ వెరీ సిస్టమాటిక్ మేనర్. ఆ మైక్రో లెవెల్లో పనిచేస్తే సుధిమతి గారు, తర్వాత రంగారావు గారు, నేను అనుకుంటాను మాక్రో లెవెల్లో వి అన్న కాన్సెప్ట్ రీవర్క్ అయ్యి రీబిల్డ్ అవుతుంది. తర్వాత ఇక ప్రాదేశిక సూత్రాలు, హక్కులు అనే రెండిట్లో ఎందుకు హక్కులకు ప్రాధాన్యత ఉంటుంది అని అంటున్నారు. వాస్తవానికి హక్కులకు కూడా రకరకాల రాను హక్కుల గురించి మాట్లాడడం ఉంది, కానీ హక్కుల అమలుకు సంబంధించిన విషయం చాలా బలహీన పడిపోతున్న సందర్భం ఒకటి ఉన్నది. అయితే ఈ దేశపు రిపబ్లిక్ ను అర్థం చేసుకున్న వాళ్ళుగా మనం ఏం చేయాలంటే పార్ట్ 2 అండ్ పార్ట్ 3 రెండు కలిస్తేనే నేను ఇంతకు ముందు చెప్పినటువంటి ప్రియంబుల్లో ఉన్న వాల్యూస్ రియలైజ్ చేసేటటువంటి పని, రియలైజేషన్ ఆఫ్ ది వాల్యూ ఆఫ్ ది ప్రియంబుల్ హ్యాపెన్స్ విత్ అ కోజెంట్ రీలుక్ ఎట్ 2 and 3, పార్ట్ 2 and పార్ట్ 3. పార్ట్ 3 అనేటటువంటిది అన్కాన్షియస్ గా మనము మర్చిపోతున్నాం. వాస్తవానికి అది చాలా స్పష్టంగా చెప్తుంది, గుడ్ గవర్నెన్స్ కోసం, డెమోక్రాటిక్ గవర్నెన్స్ కోసం ఈ నియమాలు స్టేట్ ఇట్లా డైరెక్ట్ చేయబడింది అని ఉంది. కాబట్టి దాన్ని పట్టుకుని మాట్లాడాల్సిన అవసరం ఉంది. పొలిటికల్ యాక్షన్ అంటే అక్కడి నుంచి, అంటే డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్ పాలసీలో ఉన్నటువంటి అనేకమైనటువంటి కన్స్ట్రక్టివ్ యాజ్ ప్రోగ్రెసివ్ వాల్యూస్ ను పట్టుకుని మాట్లాడమే నా దృష్టిలో పొలిటికల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ అవుతుంది. అసలు నిజంగా చెప్పాలంటే ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ బ్యూటీ ఏంటంటే, ఇండియన్ సిటిజన్ కి ఏం పొలిటికల్ ప్రోగ్రాము ఇవాళ కన్ఫ్యూజన్ లేదు. ఇవాళ మీరు ఉత్తర డైరెక్టివ్ ప్రిన్సిపల్స్ ఆఫ్ స్టేట్ పాలసీలోని 5-10 అంశాలను పట్టుకుంటే అదే పొలిటికల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్. సో ఇండియన్ కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ యొక్క గొప్పతనం ఏంటంటే, పార్ట్ 3 ఒకవేళ మీకు రైట్స్ ఇస్తే పార్ట్ 4 పొలిటికల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ కూడా ఇచ్చింది. సో పొలిటికల్ ప్రోగ్రామ్ కూడా అక్కడ ఉందన్న విషయాన్ని అర్థం చేసుకుంటే అప్పుడు పార్ట్ 4 ఇంపార్టెన్స్ ఏంటో మనకు తెలుస్తుందని నేను అనుకుంటున్నాను. బహుశా కొంచెం వేగంగా పోవడంతో కొన్ని విషయాలు చెప్పలేకపోయి ఉండొచ్చు. ఇంకొక సందర్భంలో మరింతగా వర్కింగ్ ఆఫ్ ది కాన్స్టిట్యూషన్ వాటి మీద మాట్లాడే అవకాశం, మాట్లాడే సందర్భం వస్తే నేను ఖచ్చితంగా మళ్ళా ఒకసారి కొంత చదువుకుని వస్తాను. మీరు నాకు ఈ అవకాశం ఇవ్వడం, ఈ రోజు ఈ అవకాశం ఇవ్వడం అనేటటువంటిది ఒక గొప్ప లెర్నింగ్ ఎక్స్పీరియన్స్ గా నేను భావిస్తున్నాను. నా ఫోన్ నంబరు రఘున్న గారి దగ్గర ఉంది. ఎవరికైనా ఇంకా మరిన్ని అనుమానాలు మరిన్ని ఉంటే నాకు వాట్సాప్ పెట్టొచ్చును. ఖచ్చితంగా నేను బస్సులో ప్రయాణించేవాడిని కాబట్టి నేను ఖచ్చితంగా వాట్సాప్ చూసుకుంటాను. కాలేజీ అవర్స్ తప్పిస్తే, కాలేజీ అవర్స్ లో కొంచెం చూసుకోవడం కుదరదు, కానీ కాలేజీ అవర్స్ బయట అంటే ఉదయం 7 నుంచి 9 లోపు, తర్వాత సాయంత్రం 5 నుంచి 7 లోపు నేను ప్రయాణాలు చేస్తుంటా. ఆ ప్రయాణ సందర్భంలో ఖచ్చితంగా మీ వాట్సాప్ దీనికి నేను స్పందిస్తాను, సమయం తీసుకుని మీతో మాట్లాడతాను. ఎందుకంటే మీరు ప్రశ్నించడం అనేటటువంటిదే చాలా విలువైంది. నేను నేర్చుకోవడానికి, చదువుకోవడానికి అది నన్ను ముందుకు నెడుతుంది. ఈ రోజు వాస్తవానికి నాకంటే చదువుకున్న వాళ్ళు, నాకంటే ఎంతో తమ జీవితాల్లో ఎన్నో రకాలైనటువంటి, చదువుకోవడం అంటే పుస్తకాలనే కాదు, జీవితాన్ని ఎంతో లోతుగా చదువుకున్నటువంటి మనుషులు అనేక రంగాల్లో వాళ్ళ కృషి చేసినటువంటి పెద్ద మనుషుల ముందు ఈ సాయంత్రం మాట్లాడడం అంటే, అది నాకు ఈ అవకాశం ఇచ్చినటువంటి సెంటర్ ఫర్ సోషల్ డైలాగ్ కి పరిపరి సార్లు కృతజ్ఞతలు తెలియజేసుకుంటున్నాను. థ్యాంక్ యూ సో మచ్.
Thank you, Harathi Vegeeshan. We had a wonderful evening session. I thank everyone who has participated in the session and made it a wonderful thing. I thank that you have given a rare opportunity for us, because academicians ki common man ki madhya unna gap kuda konta fill avvali. Endukante academicians are living in a different world of their own, and common man has hundreds of doubts. There is no academic leadership for the common man. This is one of the greatest difficulty in this Indian society. అందువల్ల it is I welcome academicians to spare their time and participate, talk to the common man, which enlivens the system of knowledge. Otherwise, there's a lot of gap. ఈ వరల్డ్ లో అన్ని దేశాల కంటే కూడా అంటే in most of the countries, intellectuals are leading the nations and their words are influencing the nation and the people. Whereas in India, intellectuals have become a seclusive section, almost being forgotten by the people because the connectivity is lost between the intellectuals and the common man. Common man thinks that intellectual is talking all blah blah. Intellectual thinks that this man is unworthy of even discussion. So this is a hostile atmosphere which is created in this country. So thank you very much, Harathi Vegeeshan, for sparing your time. Thank you all. Thank you, Sandeep ji. Thank you, Ramesh ji. Thank you, Chelikani ji, Balmohan Das garu, and all Kasara Rangarao garu, Dr. Muralidhar. All of you, thank you very much for making this session a wonderful thing. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
Good night.
Kumar garu. Thank you, Ramesh.
Thank you,
Very
sir.
nice. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Good
yeah.
night, sir.